Today's lesson is about the Hellenistic Age and the legacy of ancient Greece. After the Persian Wars ended with Greece victorious, the Greeks entered into what we call its Golden Age. A Golden Age is when a society has reached its peak in art, skilled work, and activity. It's during their Golden Age that the Greeks made great advances in art, science, literature, and architecture, just to name a few areas. However, as we saw in the Peloponnesian Wars, this left the Greeks weakened and open to conquest. All of this, the Persian War, the Peloponnesian Wars, the Alexander the Great's conquests, all of this was part of what we called the Greek Classical period, which was followed by the Greek Hellenistic period. With Philip of Macedonia's conquest of ancient Greece and his son Alexander's conquest of Egypt and Persia, a much older part of the world was opened up to the Greeks for travel and colonization. And due to Alexander's conquest of these much older civilizations, the culture of the Greeks was exported to these older parts of the world. Now, this was not an outright replacement of local cultures, but a blending together of traditions of all three. We call this blending of Greek, Egyptian, and Persian cultures from this time Hellenistic culture. Everywhere Alexander went and conquered, he founded or started new cities, more than 70 in total, many of which were named in some way after Alexander himself. Clearly, he was trying to make a statement. Each would be designed with Greek temples, gymnasiums, and theaters. The ultimate Hellenistic city was Alexandria, built where the Nile meets the Mediterranean Sea. In Alexandria, Greek architecture could be seen everywhere, along with the Greeks, Jews, and Egyptians, and many others sharing their ideas. And it's because of its location at the center of trade routes connecting Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, Alexandria attracted merchants that made the city rich. At the heart of this city was the great Library of Alexandria. The rulers of Alexandria knew knowledge was power and took advantage of the fact that all these travelers occasionally brought books and scrolls with them containing a wealth of knowledge about the world. Every single ship that docked in Alexandria, a necessary stop along the trade routes, would be required to turn over any and all books and scrolls they had on board. They would then copy the scrolls and books. The originals would stay in the Library of Alexandria, and the copies would be sent back to the ships. They even sent ships across the Mediterranean Sea searching for books to copy and knowledge to store in this library. Now, the wealth of this knowledge attracted the greatest minds of the ancient world, who were able to use these books to further human knowledge. In fact, 1600 years before Columbus sailed west, the Greeks in the Library of Alexandria proved that the world was round without sailing across the world, and they were even able to calculate the size of the Earth to within a few miles of its actual size using simple trigonometry. Now, if you show this image to your math teacher, they might be able to explain to you how this works. Sadly, much of this library was destroyed, and its knowledge was lost forever during the time of the Romans, which will be our next stop on our tour of world history. Other parts of Hellenistic culture included the Greek art of philosophy, which means love of knowledge. The Greek philosophers of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle spent their lives teaching and searching for the answers to the great mysteries of the world. Together, they created the foundation of our modern world's philosophy, mathematics, and science. Even this very class is influenced by Hellenistic culture, as the concept of studying and recording history was essentially created by one of the world's first historians, a Greek man named Herodotus, as he studied the causes of the Persian Wars soon after they ended. The Greeks were lovers of theater as well, writing thousands of plays depicting stories of Greek legends. These plays were divided into dramas that covered serious topics and generally had unhappy endings, and comedies that were used to make audiences laugh and mocked famous people of the past and of the time. These plays were performed all over the Hellenistic world in the theaters built by the Greeks in their new homes. Even the ideas of democracy and law that formed the foundation of countries like the United States can be traced back to the Hellenistic world of the Greeks. Democracy, a Greek word meaning rule of the people, was born in ancient Athens, though they only let men who were not slaves and were full citizens to vote. But along with democracy came the idea of one person, one vote, a cornerstone of American democracy today. No one, regardless of wealth or power, is allowed to cast more than a single vote. This, in theory, creates equality among all citizens of a government. The Greeks even created the ideas of term limits for political offices to prevent elected officials from getting too much power by staying in position far too long. They even separated the powers to write, enforce, and judge the laws to prevent any one group from gaining too much power, both of which are another cornerstone of American democracy. The Greeks also gave us the idea of rule of law, where no one was above the law. Everyone had to follow the rules, regardless of wealth or social status. Even the idea of a jury having to decide the guilt or innocence of people being accused of breaking laws comes from Hellenistic culture. Even though the Hellenistic culture created by Alexander's conquest thrived over 2,000 years ago, it still influences the way we entertain ourselves with dramas and comedies, the ways we explore the world with philosophy and science, and even the way we choose to rule our modern nation states.